Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a weekly update. It's going to be a new series, hopefully, where I cover all the goings on in the four major leagues, as well as the two leagues that I mostly cover, the LJL and the LLA. This week will be a little light on the LLA as the playoffs start tomorrow, so there is not too much to cover. There are many orders we could try for this video in terms of what order we do the leagues in as well, before I forget. This series, we could do any order from like hype of the week to my perceived power rankings to alphabetical or whatever. So if you guys have a preference about that, please let me know in the comments. But until we get a definite order, I think I'll go with the events that I care about most in the moment. So as you can probably see, we're starting with the LJL. Top Esports have just taken Game 3 of their series, by the way. Let's start with that. Let's actually start and get into the LJL. We got the first round of playoffs this week, starting with the upper bracket clashes between the top four seeds. We had Destination Focus Me taking on Crest Gaming Act, and Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming taking on Fennel. Let's start by covering that first game. Some would say that CGA were lucky to even make the upper bracket playoffs. They finished in fourth spot ahead of the much stronger Sengoku Gaming, purely thanks to the Toll2 and TFM coaching drama leading DFM to forfeit their series. This meant that heading into the game, many expected DFM to just steamroll CGA. However, Crest Gaming, to be fair, put up more of a fight than I think anyone expected. Whilst DFM did come away with a 3-0 win, players like Honey and Yuzio put up a strong performance that I hope to see them continue the lower bracket series. Especially Yuzio, very impressed from the V3 graduate, very well played, especially on his Galio and his supportive mid lane role in general. In the other game, we had the clash of the strongest ADCs not called Unicorn in the region, with the baseball team taking on Fennel. It was a very close series, with Hawks taking a while to get into that first game, but once awake, the series really didn't disappoint, with both teams looking the strongest they have all split, although, let's be honest, maybe not saying too much for LJL. There were standout performances from Marble and Kinatu for Hawks, as well as solid performances from Tana and Hachimecha. Especially going back to Kinatu, so good on the Jacks, really top performance from any top laner I think I've seen this split in the LJL. Overall, there was definitely room to improve, especially for Fennel's bot lane, as Sol and Corporal looked a little lost at times, but I hope that they'll step up their performances for the lower bracket run, and I think that's almost certainly going to happen, because a lot of the improvements for both teams, very, very simple. Like, Hawks, the one that stood out the most was that when Marble was playing Kai'Sa, he'd go in on his R, and he'd get isolated from the rest of the team. That's something that's very easy to solve, and both teams had issues with target priority, and I think both teams will be able to solve that fairly easily. So then let's look to the lower bracket, where we'll have the games for next week. Two tasty matchups, in fact. We have the Talent Factory, V3 Esports, yet to win a single series in the league since, I think, 2022 spring, where they won 3, I think that's when they last won. I think that's the split as well. Sengoku Gaming, taking on the Sengoku Gaming, the best team in spring, for the opportunity to face Crest Gaming. I think that V3 Esports won't win a single series, but what makes this won't win a single game in the series? But what makes this an incredibly interesting game is the fact that V3 Esports constantly generate great talent, and they'll be displaying this great talent against some names that you would recognize, like Loken, formerly of JDG. So you'll see some good players of good native Japanese players taking on some very, very good imported talent on Sengoku. So this is a great game to watch. I think it'll be really exciting, even though it should be a 3-0 win for Sengoku. Then we have the eternal bridesmaids of the lower bracket in Burning Core and Axis fighting for the chance to take on Fennel. Burning Core and Axis consistently finish between like 5th and 7th. I don't think Axis have actually finished above 6th, to be honest with you. Burning Core, they have made 4th in the past, but whilst they've got some great imported talent, they've had some great imported talent in the past as well, they don't never seem to get over that hump. So this could be a very good game between two very consistent teams who are towards the lower end of the LJL, but are still very entertaining to watch. And they'll be looking to try and take on Fennel in the next round, where they will be again facing a very strong team who perhaps they might be able to step up and play very well against. Next, I guess we go for a significant step up in talent and quantity of games next week, as we head to the LPL, where we are already very much deep into the playoffs. As I'm recording, we have already lost 4 very strong teams to the monster that is the LPL playoff bracket. These teams are Team WE, who lost in a well-contested 3-1 to EDG, Royal Never Give Up, who lost to a reinvigorated NIP 3-1, Oh My God, who continue to excite their fans in a bitter 3-2 exit to EDG. They still are one of my favourite teams in the league, and probably in all of League of Legends, and NIP, Ninjas in Pyjamas, who lost in a spirited 3-1 series to Weibo. This leaves us with the 6 teams who are guaranteed to make regional finals: JD Gaming, Billy Gaming, Edward Gaming, LNG Esports, and Top Esports. This means that all the remaining teams have at least a second chance to qualify for Worlds, as only 2 places are guaranteed from the summer split. Right now, we have the 4th seed top esports taking on 8th seeded EDG for access to the lower bracket semi-final clash against Billy. As I mentioned earlier, that has just TES have just taken a 2-1 lead in that series. Whilst tomorrow, we have LNG taking on Weibo for the same access to the lower bracket in semi-final clash against JDG. If you can catch both series, I recommend you do, because LPL is definitely the league to watch when I return next week. We'll only have the grand final of the summer split and the regional finals left to play, meaning there are many exciting and important fixtures to take place between then and now. Next, I think we're going to head to LCK, where we are still in the penultimate week of group stage, and we'll be starting with the drama of the league T1. Having lost Faker to injury, T1 have been in all sorts of shit. They are currently on a 3-series losing streak, having only picked up 1 game against the struggling Frederick Brown since their win against Nongshim. The team has looked all over the place without their key shot caller, Faker, and even the normally godly mechanics you'd expect out of the other 4 players have been MIA. Whilst they need a lot of bad luck to miss out on playoffs, by which I mean they literally need to lose every remaining series and have 2 of the teams below them, currently going 4 wins to 10 losses, winning every single series, it's still a possibility, which seems to look ever more likely with every disastrous series that T1 lose, especially after their most recent game against Frederick Brown, where they just looked absolutely awful. Now, I think we should head to the rest of the league, where we get to talk about the top 2 teams that took each other on last week. As I said, the battle for first hotted up last week, with KT roster 2-0ing Gen.G to claim the top spot. Both the teams now sit with a 13-1 record, with 4 series left to play. It's worth saying, though, that if Faker does come back, then their schedules are relatively even and both pretty difficult, as Gen.G have to play HLE in D+, but if Faker doesn't come back, that is a much harder run-in. I'm sorry, D+, just a complete different aside, D+ still sounds wrong. Speaking of Hammer Life and Damwon, though, those 2 teams are now level on points thanks to D+ losing to KT and HLE beating T1. Their run-ins are definitely something to look out for, though, as they still have to play each other, and whilst they are already guaranteed playoffs, there's a lot that they can still gain out of this regular season. Now, I guess as we run down the league and we get a look at some more interesting fixtures, we hit the 410 crew, which contains Kwandong Freaks, Live Sandbox Gaming, Frederick Bryan, and Nongshim Red Force. These boys are essentially fighting for that last playoff place, and they've got some exciting fixtures left to do it in. The Freaks probably thought they had the hardest run in, as they've still got to play KT, Damwon, and T1. Although if they're still in contention after all those fixtures, their last game is against DRX, who sit at the foot of the table as we speak. But the even harder fixture list belongs to Sandbox. They've got to play Gen.G, T1, and KT, with their easiest fixture being a battle against fellow competitors Frederick Bryan. Frederick Bryan, I think, have one of the easier run-ins, as they have to play fellow playoff contenders, Sandbox and Nongshim, as well as placement dwellers DRX, although they do end the regular season with a game against Gen.G. The Nuda boys Nongshim have also got a hard run-in with clashes against HLE, Damwon and KT, although they do have a light reliever against Bryan, and last, and the team I keep bashing, is DRX. They aren't as far off the playoffs as I've made it sound, as they're technically only 1 series away, but they have a hard run-in having to play T1, as allegedly the game that Faker's going to come back for as well, and HLE this week, by which point they might already be eliminated before the last week starts. The exciting games to watch this week have to be the potential return of Faker against DRX, and the playoff contention clashes between Brown and Sandbox, and as well as Nongshim and Brown. Other potential classics are the telecom battle between T1 and KT, especially if Faker returns and is in form, as well as Gen.G against Damwon, especially if D+ show up. Now, I think we should turn our attention to my home region, where lots has happened, particularly in context of the LEC finals, which occur after this split finishes, after we've had the conclusion of the group stage just this week. This week, we had 3 relative underdogs joining G2 in the playoffs. This meant in the form of XL, Heretics, and Fnatic, who all showed up and really impressed me actually this week relative to how they had been playing. This meant that Team BDS, SK Gaming, Koi, and Mad Lions were all sent packing from the summer split, but the bitter consequences occurred in the championship points tallies, where Mad Lions and BDS joined G2 in securing an upper bracket slot for the LEC finals, and SK joined them as the 4th team to qualify, leaving only 2 slots up for grabs. There are 4 teams that are still vying for these 2 slots. Out of them, Koi cannot gain any more points and sit above the drop zone. Fortunately for them, whoever loses out of Fnatic and Heretics cannot leapfrog them, and as a result, they will be rooting for XL to beat whoever wins that series so as to secure them 6th in the standings. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the super team Vitality, who join Astralis in being out of contention for the LEC finals and can no longer make worlds. This means that the games to watch this week mostly come in the lower bracket, as each game is critical for who might be able to compete at LEC finals for a 50-50 chance to represent the LEC at worlds. Although, you can join me tonight for a live viewing of G2 versus XL, as this will be a critical game for XL's season in their hopes of pursuing LEC final qualification. Next, I think we should turn to my least favourite region, NA, where the regular season has just wrapped up and we get to say goodbye to one of my least favourite orgs in the league. Let's go to that now. As I mentioned, with the league wrapping up, we lost one of my least favourite orgs in all of League of Legends, Immortals, as well as another failed Western super team, this time one filled with imports, FlyQuest. Next week, we only have to concern ourselves with the upper bracket quarterfinals, where 3 seeds go through to compete. 3 seeds through 3 through 6 compete. Compete. In this, we get to see Team Liquid take on Giant Killers NRG, so TL should be fine. And the two teams with different levels of accusations of abusing players take each other on as evil geniuses face the fleeing TSM. I'm going to be honest and stop the NA bashing here and say that the region shocked me this split. I didn't expect 100 Thieves to be as shaky as they are. I didn't expect FlyQuest to continue playing as if they didn't care about improving. But on a positive note, I didn't expect to see EG play as well as they have, nor did I expect Golden Guardians to continue their form. But let's be honest though, this league doesn't get exciting until next week, where the top 2 teams start to play and we start eliminating teams from the lower bracket, where we'll get to see if Golden Guardians really are real shit, whether EG are really actually any good, and whether Cloud9 are going to continue to play well. So that will be exciting. But then let's move on to the last and kind of least region for now, the LLA. This is the league I kind of know the least about. Especially in comparison with the others, I don't know that much, but it's always intrigued me. So starting the day after tomorrow, we will be starting my live views of the region, kicking off with the undefeated Rainbow 7 taking on the formerly sponsored by Gillette Infinity Esports in the upper bracket semi-finals. There is lots to look forward to in the LLA, as we have all of the top 4 seeds in action this week as they vie for a spot in the upper bracket finals. Rainbow 7 have to be the favourites going into this week, but there are some standout players and imports in this league with players like Samdi, Mia and Jose Diardo on Estral Esports. Regional icons include Solid Snake and Ackerman paired up with former KT player 5Kid on Infinity. Rainbow 7 have the former T1 Challenger prospect Miryu, and 6 Karma have former Sandbox player on Fleek. It is a bit disappointing though that the only 2 teams not filled with imports, All Knights and Leviathan, are comfortably the worst 2 teams in the league. But there are a lot of exciting players, and I'm looking forward to live viewing them soon. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to leave a comment, and you'll join me for the next one, where we will be doing lots of more live viewing the rest of this week. We will be breaking down a DFM game, and then we'll be back for the league reviews next week. See you then.